Avoidant people often get misunderstood. Many believe they are incapable of love, emotionally cold, or permanently unavailable. But the truth is very different. Avoidants feel deeply, sometimes even more intensely than others, but they are wired to protect themselves from emotional overwhelm. When someone comes into their life and behaves in a certain way, something unexpected happens. Their defenses soften, their emotional walls weaken, and slowly, almost quietly, they fall deeply in love, not because they were chased, fixed, or forced, but because specific emotional behaviors made love feel safe instead of threatening. Avoidant individuals don't fall in love through pressure because pressure activates their deepest fear: loss of autonomy. When emotional intensity is pushed too fast, their nervous system interprets it as danger, not desire. What truly opens their heart is emotional safety, the feeling that connection does not require them to sacrifice independence, control, or inner balance. Emotional safety is created when emotions are expressed without urgency, when presence is offered without expectation, and when closeness is invited rather than demanded. In that environment, the avoidant nervous system slowly relaxes, allowing genuine attachment to emerge instead of defensive withdrawal. Emotional safety looks like calm communication, steady energy, and predictability. It feels like knowing that emotions can exist without conflict, silence can exist without punishment, and space can exist without abandonment. When someone responds to distance with self-regulation instead of anxiety, it sends a powerful subconscious message: closeness with this person will not overwhelm or consume. That message is deeply attractive to avoidant attachment because it contradicts past experiences where intimacy felt suffocating or conditional. Avoidants are highly sensitive to emotional tone. They notice who respects boundaries, who doesn't escalate small moments into emotional emergencies, and who can hold feelings without trying to control outcomes. Safety builds when emotions are shared clearly but not used as leverage. It builds when vulnerability is modeled without expectation of immediate reciprocity. Over time, this consistent emotional safety becomes addictive because it allows the avoidant to experience connection without losing selfhood. As safety increases, defenses soften. Emotional curiosity replaces avoidance. Desire grows not from being chased, but from realizing that closeness no longer threatens internal equilibrium. In that space, affection begins to feel grounding instead of destabilizing, and love becomes something that feels chosen rather than forced. Respecting space without resentment is one of the most powerful emotional experiences an avoidant can have. For avoidant attachment, space is not rejection, it is regulation. When space is honored calmly, without emotional punishment, guilt, or silent expectations, it stops feeling like a threat to the connection. Instead of triggering fear of engulfment or fear of conflict, it communicates trust. Trust that the bond is stable enough to breathe and that closeness doesn't have to be constantly proven. Many people say they give space, but their energy tells a different story. Resentment, withdrawal, or emotional coldness often follow, and avoidants feel this immediately. What made the difference here was that space was given with warmth still intact. Communication didn't disappear. Kindness didn't vanish. The emotional door stayed open without pressure to walk through it. That balance allowed the avoidant nervous system to remain calm instead of defensive. When space is respected in this way, the avoidant begins to associate distance with safety instead of loss. This paradoxically increases emotional pull. The mind no longer needs to protect itself by pulling away because there's no threat of being controlled or emotionally cornered. Freedom stops feeling like an escape and starts feeling like a choice. Over time, this creates emotional security. The avoidant notices that closeness returns naturally without being chased back. Desire grows because connection is no longer something that has to be managed or negotiated. It becomes voluntary. The absence of resentment removes emotional debt, allowing affection to emerge cleanly rather than out of obligation. This experience is rare for avoidance, especially if past relationships used distance as a weapon. When space is met with self-respect and emotional steadiness, it rewires expectations around intimacy. The avoidant begins to approach instead of retreat because connection finally feels safe enough to miss. Not chasing validation creates a powerful shift in how avoidant attachment responds emotionally. When approval, reassurance, or constant confirmation isn't demanded, the avoidant nervous system doesn't feel monitored or responsible for someone else's emotional stability. This absence of pressure allows interaction to feel light, voluntary, and emotionally clean. Instead of sensing obligation, the avoidant senses freedom, and freedom is where attraction quietly deepens. Self-validation changes the entire dynamic. When someone knows their worth and doesn't seek permission to feel secure, their presence feels grounded rather than needy. Avoidants are highly attuned to emotional dependency, even when it's subtle. They notice when attention is given freely rather than as a transaction for reassurance. This independence is deeply attractive because it removes the fear of being needed in a way that feels suffocating or consuming. A full, self-directed life also plays a major role. When time, energy, and identity aren't centered around the connection, the avoidant doesn't feel like the emotional center of someone's world. Instead of feeling responsible for happiness, they feel invited into it. That invitation carries far more emotional pull than pressure ever could. Curiosity grows because the connection doesn't feel like a demand on resources, but an addition to an already stable life. Not chasing validation also creates emotional polarity. Desire naturally increases when attention isn't overextended. The avoidant begins to lean in, not because they're being pursued, but because they sense emotional self-sufficiency. This reverses the usual push-pull dynamic. Instead of retreating to regain control, they move closer out of genuine interest. Over time, this emotional independence communicates respect for both self and connection. It shows that affection is offered, not begged for, and that presence is chosen, not extracted. This stability allows attraction to deepen quietly because the avoidant no longer feels trapped in a role where reassurance is expected on demand. Emotional honesty without pressure creates a rare sense of safety for avoidant attachment. Expressing feelings clearly, calmly, and without urgency allows emotions to exist without turning into demands. Avoidants often shut down when emotional expression feels like an expectation for immediate reciprocity. When feelings are shared simply as truth rather than leverage, the nervous system stays regulated instead of defensive. This kind of honesty sounds like naming emotions without assigning responsibility. It doesn't imply that someone else must fix, respond, or match the intensity. It allows vulnerability to be witnessed without being negotiated. For an avoidant, this removes the fear that emotional openness will lead to obligation, conflict, or loss of control. Instead of retreating, they feel invited to understand rather than perform. When emotions are expressed without pressure, timing becomes flexible. The avoidant is given space to process internally, which is essential for emotional integration. processing often happens privately before it can be shared outwardly. Allowing that rhythm communicates patience and respect, which builds trust over time. Trust grows not because emotions are hidden, but because they are expressed in a way that doesn't overwhelm. This approach also models emotional maturity. It demonstrates that feelings can be held with stability rather than urgency. Avoidants often fear that emotions will spiral or escalate into emotional chaos. Calm honesty contradicts that fear and slowly reshapes expectations around intimacy. Over time, this creates a new emotional pattern. Vulnerability no longer feels like a trap, but like an option. The avoidant begins to open up naturally, not because they're pushed to, but because emotional expression no longer feels risky. Safety replaces avoidance, and curiosity replaces shutdown, allowing emotional depth to grow at a pace that feels manageable and self-directed